Let's talk about quantitative and qualitative data, nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio data. What is the difference between quantitative and qualitative data? Quantitative data are countable or measurable. Qualitative data are categorical. They're not countable or measurable. They're attributes or characteristics. You can't do calculations with them. Here are the definitions again. Let's look at some examples. Classify these data as quantitative or qualitative. How about height? Height is measurable, therefore is quantitative. Weight? Weight is also measurable, so it too is quantitative. How about hair color? You can't do calculations with hair color. What is red minus brown? That doesn't make any sense. Hair color is qualitative. Age? Age is countable, it's quantitative. Personality? Introverted, conscientious, open to new experiences. What is introverted minus conscientious? You can't do calculations with those. So personality would be the example of qualitative data. How about year? Years are countable. That's quantitative. ID number. You might think that ID numbers are numbers, so they're quantitative, but they're actually not. You can't do calculations with ID numbers. What are you going to do? Multiply two ID numbers against each other, subtract them? No, ID numbers are really qualitative. We can also classify data in this way: nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. Nominal data, that's categories with no order. Ordinal, ordered categories. You've got rankings, ratings on a scale. Differences are not measurable. What's the difference between fourth and fifth? We don't know. Maybe fourth place and fifth place were really close together. Maybe they're far apart. It's impossible to tell. Interval data, that means measurements can be compared using less than, greater than, or equals, and it has no true zero. We'll talk in a moment about what that means. Ratio data, that's measurements in things like feet and pounds with a true zero. In other words, a natural zero or an inherent zero. Again, we'll talk in a little bit about what that means. Classify these data as nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. Height. Height is ratio. Okay, ratio means measurements with a true zero. Height has a true zero. That means 0 inches means no height at all. So height would be an example of ratio data. Temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, that would be an interval. Okay, here's what we mean by that. Measurements can be compared using less than, greater than, or equal. You can say that the temperature yesterday is less than the temperature today, but it has no true zero. That is, 0 does not mean nothing. 0 does not mean none of the quantity is present. So degrees Fahrenheit doesn't have a true zero. If it's 0 degrees outside, that doesn't mean there's no temperature at all. So that's what we mean by a true zero. That's why temperature in degrees Fahrenheit is interval data. How about weight? Okay, weight is ratio that has a true zero. It's because if your weight is 0 pounds, you have no weight whatsoever. Hair color, yeah, that's nominal. It's categories without any order. Age. Age can be counted. That would be ratio. It has a true zero. 0 years old means you have no age whatsoever. Personality, yeah, you can't order personalities. That's nominal. Year? Okay, year would actually be interval data because you have no true zero. There is no year 0. You've got 1 BC, and then after that comes 1 AD. There was no year 0. There's no true zero. Therefore, year data, that's interval data. Class rank, that would be an example of something that's ordinal. You've got order, first, and then second, and then third, and then fourth, etc. Social security number. You might think that it's something numerical, but again, we saw earlier that's qualitative. It's nominal. So you've got categories without any order. So there's no order to social security numbers. It's not like my social security number is better or worse than yours. There's just no order to those. How about a survey with these responses? Strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. That's actually ordinal data because strongly disagree is less than disagree, which is less than neutral, etc. An example of a Likert scale. So if you've got a survey with responses like these, that's a Likert scale. Some people say Likert, but it's actually pronounced Likert, named after the American psychologist Rensis Likert. How about the rating of the service at a restaurant? Poor, fair, good, excellent? Yep, that's ordinal as well. That's another example of a Likert scale. Poor is less than fair, is less than good. IQ score, that would be interval data because there's no true zero. It's not like if you have an IQ of 0, you have, intelligence is absent. Amazon rating between 1 star and 5 stars, that would actually be ordinal data because again, you've got things in order, but you can't necessarily tell the difference between the difference between 1 star and 2 stars is not necessarily the same difference as the difference between 2 stars and 3 stars. Okay, so let's classify nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio data as quantitative or qualitative. Recall that qualitative data are categorical, not countable or measurable. Their attributes or characteristics. You can't do calculations with them. And that's why nominal data would be qualitative, things like personality, hair color. On the other hand, quantitative data are countable or measurable. So, for example, temperature, height, weight, things like that. And that's why interval data and ratio data would both be quantitative. Now, notice, interval data has characteristics of both qualitative and quantitative data. So with interval data, I mean, in some sense, it's quantitative because you have these ways to compare them, less than, greater than, or equal. So you have an order, so it's not qualitative, but you can't really do calculations with interval data. It's not like, because you don't even know the difference between 5th place and 7th place. That you can't know that. And so that's why interval data is regarded as both qualitative and quantitative. Some books, in fact, regarded as simply qualitative, but for our purposes, we'll regard it as qualitative and quantitative. As long as we're talking about ratings, the worst film, according to Rotten Tomatoes, is Ballistic. X versus Sever. Actually has some big stars in it. Antonio Banderas and Lucy Liu. Of 119 film critics, 0% liked the film. One said that if you ran the film backwards, including the soundtrack, it would not make any less sense.